Hello, everybody. I'm Will,
And I'm Kristen.
and this is So I'm Watching Feud, Season 2, Episode 6, Hats and Gloves and Effete Homosexuals. I,
I liked this one better.
I like this one better.
Yeah.
I was gonna be like, you might have to do some of the heavy lifting because I was just kind of watching this one. I wasn't really thinking.
It was better. Well,
was anyone?
Well, no, not so much that, but I mean, like, just generally, it was very, like, they are now all coming to grips with the fact that they and everything that mattered to them no longer matters to the world. Like, the dinner parties are not a thing, no one's wearing hats anymore, the hat store's closing, no one's wearing gloves anymore, the glove counter's no longer at Bloomingdale's or wherever they were.
Not Lord and Taylor.
But if you check the old lady store,
that four-letter
they all have
word.
it. So it's like all kinds of stuff like that. And then the thing for me about this episode is also, okay, or about the show, I guess in general, is I feel like tonally they are not clear on what they're doing, because we are back to the women all being the most sympathetic. And again, they are handling this passage of time with so much more grace than Truman. So that by the time we got to the end of this episode, I was just like, he just is pathetic. He's just a pathetic sad sack who can't do anything and is constantly trying to distract himself from this passage of time, trying to force this young girl, Kate, into being like Babe 2.0 so he can relive these glory days.
But not even just Babe.
Yeah.
Like, he's not even making her 2.0.
Sure. To the point where, like, Richard Avedon, who is not much younger, if at all, than Truman, is like, are you out of your ever-loving mind bringing her in there with this beehive? Like, absolutely not. And
she was mortified the entire time.
So it's just like, I don't know. It's that kind of stuff is really interesting to me. But also, just like with the swan metaphor in the previous episode, there's no subtext. It's all text. He literally says, "Oh, I finally went out of fashion," and I'm like, "Great."
It's so funny that this ended with Perfect Day.
Yeah.
Lou Reed.
Yeah.
Because it was reminding me of Spencer.
Oh, sure.
And that was used in the trailer for Spencer.
Sure.
And all I can remember is the Pop Culture Happy Hour. I don't know if you ever listened to it when they talked about Spencer.
Maybe.
Ooh. Ooh. But they were like, there's a scene where she's being menaced in the walk-in by that
Timothy
butler.
No, it's because it's Wormtail.
Is it?
It's like, yeah, Peter Pettigrew from Harry Potter.
And they're talking about the pheasants,
yeah.
And he's like, beautiful birds, but they're not very bright. And she goes, that's what they say about me.
Yeah.
And it's like...
Thank you. Very good. Well, very well done. Because then it reminds me of the thing, because it's just like such a stupid line of writing. Like, you didn't have to make that text. It should have stayed subtext. Like, even if you had to have him say, oh, it finally happened, but then he doesn't answer when Rick is like, what finally happened? That's one thing. If he's just like, oh, like wistful or whatever, we can glean from the subtext that what he means is he's gone out of style.
So I don't know. I don't actually know about Truman Capote. This is like what I know. So, I mean, was he subtle or...
I've never read In Cold Blood, but the implication is that it's like, it's a great work of writing. Like, it's great. It's very well done. And I mean, if those lines that were the voiceover at the end, if that's actually from whatever he managed to get done of this book, that's good writing. But like, the writing of the show is what my problem is. So then it goes...
But what I'm saying, if it's a tribute to...
Oh, I mean, I don't know. As a person, I don't think he was very subtle.
Or his prose.
Yeah. But that's the thing that I keep thinking of every time they land one of these clunkers is the line from Tenet that we talk about all the time, where I'm like, Christopher Nolan, dude, bless you for whatever, but like, it's going to kill everyone in the world, and then you force Elizabeth Debicki to say, including my son. Yes, he is on the world. He is included already. Ridiculous.
I don't know. I enjoyed this one in the sense that I did feel like we were covering
a lot.
not necessarily new
well,
ground.
but not new ground, but it was like we've like
seen this show
Yeah.
before, but I liked the Palm Springs. I do think of him as an obnoxious but old friend.
sure.
So in that regard, watching him sort of like when he was on the phone with, assuming Kate,
Yeah, someone.
where
Oh yeah.
holding the phone away from the drink,
Yeah.
and I just love that. Of course, I'm writing, glug.
Yeah.
And even was the guy's name Rick?
Yeah.
I found that sort of fascinating.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people are going to write that off as Ryan Murphy being indulgent in television and all that, but I actually think that that's probably a little more common than people
Sure.
realize.
Specifically in the 60s and the 70s. Okay, first of all, that's how every porn starts. Second of all, I really do admire the chutzpah of just saying, have you ever let a man suck your dick? Would you like to? Kind of a thing. Like, I admire that level of confidence.
Well, and also Truman has such an examined life.
Sure.
That to have this boy come in who's sort of like, okay.
Yeah. And then won't shut the fuck up about Freon.
But that almost was more endearing. I would be so in love. I would have been heart crestfallen.
Okay, so that's the thing too. That is like
that guy's not gay.
No. He misses his fiancée Gina that works at the jewelry counter.
And because I mean they even hinted at it on the show that him and Kate were more
suitable.
Plugged in.
Yeah.
And it
because Truman's old. He's an old man. He's in his 50s. He's too old for it, and he's like in his 50s from the 20s. Like, that is so different than being in your 50s now.
We're north of 35
We are
now.
north of 35, but like, because that's the thing for me too with Truman is like, so there were these moments of like deep pathetic behavior in this episode, but then also there were these moments where he was really truly clued in to the world around him, where at the end,
because I think he kind of saw, and this is certainly the way that I see it, I think he kind of saw Rick as, but he was even too demanding of Rick.
Well, but that's what I was
gonna say. I think he saw him as the gift that it was. Like,
yes, that's exactly what I was gonna say, because he was a little too demanding of it, like trying so hard to fuck during the Love Boat.
Let him watch the Love Boat.
Rick was enamored of the Love Boat. He he was like, I'll let you blow me during commercials. How's that? Fantasy Island's on next. And it was just like checkmark 100. But the thing is too, is like at the end when he came home and Rick had his bags packed, he literally said, "You're leaving sooner than I hoped, but you stayed longer than I expected." And that like implies a level of self-awareness that like I'm not getting from him all the time. So is it
but
like
we get it sometimes.
I don't think it's enough for like, because it's because also there was the moment where they were in Central Park with Rick and Kate, and it was him and Rick and Kate and Jack, and he and Jack were like talking and reminiscing and having a lovely time, and they're like still sort of together but not really, and I was like, this man who loves you, who's loved you for 30 years, is trying so hard to pull you out of your own bullshit, and you're just like throwing him to Switzerland with both hands. I don't know. It's very frustrating.
But I think maybe he's a compartmentalizer, because it's like he gets different things from different people.
Sure.
And so it feels like he's like the relationship he has with Jack. That feels like a constant. Like
it's always there.
It's almost more familial.
Okay.
Or like a hard-earned lifelong best friend.
Okay.
Where it's like the flavor of the month boy toys are more the companionship or the romance, and there's part of, well, not part of me, it's the kind of thing that I kind of totally get that. I get having different relationships that you get different things from.
Yeah.
But I guess
and at no point
maybe that's what the show's kind of about.
At no point has he claimed to be monogamous or anything. So it's like, whatever, but also
I didn't realize how much CZ, how constant she was.
She really has stuck by him in a way.
Kind of, I feel like next to Babe, she's the most on the show. And Babe's been gone for 2 episodes.
Mostly.
And there was that scene where, because again, like I said, I drifted a little bit where I was just sort of watching it. And there was the scene with CZ watching, and I guess you were right, because I kind of was like, wait a minute, I've lost the thread.
He was
What's
like,
happening?
I think he was finally apologizing to
Gore
Vidal. Hilarious.
I can't decide if I wish that we had seen if they had cast Gore Vidal or if it works better as
Without.
this, like, because I do like that notion, because we had in the previous episode CZ's husband, and we didn't see him.
Yeah.
And I like the notion that we're not fully invested in all of them, or all the pieces of all of them.
And again, I think that that's kind of on purpose, because to go back to the previous episode, when he was like, I was trying to, you lampoon the men, and it's like, but the men are nothing. Like, in this one, we talk multiple times about multiple different men that Lee is seeing, at least one new man that Lee is seeing, because she's been divorced again. And it's like, Slim's always talking about different men that she's with, and says the men are disposable. The men don't have any. And so for him to, that's so disingenuous for him to be like, I was trying to talk shit about the men. And he also keeps saying, I could have been meaner. Like, the real thing is that I was kind. I like had meaner stuff to say. And I'm like,
that's not the point. That
again, yeah.
Be the point.
And it's like, I'm also, that's confusing then about, again, your theming and your tone in the show. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be taking from this besides what you said in the last episode, which everyone's just terrible, I guess? Question mark?
But I didn't buy that.
Yeah.
I felt like the episode was instructing
me.
Yeah. But I was like, not. No. I mean, because I even joked, I was like, the ugly side of beauty?
Yeah.
What?
Exactly.
And I'm like, human beings contain multitudes.
Yeah.
Everyone has been ugly. Everyone has been kind.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just play it like a clip show and be like, see? Haha, got you. You were wrong the whole time.
Exactly.
She's the villain. And it's like...
That's actually hilariously something that we talk about a lot when we cover Buffy, because we're like, Xander actually kind of sucks. And it's like, but there are all these compilations of these moments where Xander's amazing. And it's like, I'm like, yeah, for those 6 minutes over the course of 7, he was amazing. You're right. Yeah. But like that, what about all the in-between times when he has, and so that's kind of like you said, sure, maybe Babe did that at her daughter's birthday, but like, is that the only bad thing she did at one of her daughter's birthdays? Or, is that a constant state of being? Yeah,
there was a few more things that I feel like I wanted to say. Well, I actually did want to talk a little bit about Lee, because...
Boy, did she come in hot with the F slur. More than once.
Well, the difference is, she used it so casually.
Yeah.
Whereas... Anne was calling him a name.
Sure.
Anne was mad and using it as an expression of anger.
Sure.
The Lee scene, that was exposing who she is.
Just like, you're an F slur and it's disgusting.
Well, she was like, I'm not going to get in the middle of the two of them, those two F words.
Yeah.
And because it took CZ out.
It did, yeah.
And there was even a follow-up scene. And that
when
was one
her
of those,
and Babe were looking for gloves, and she was like, we owe him respect. Okay. I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually loved that scene with CZ and Babe, because I guess I didn't really realize, like, in society, or like even, because I mean, they're all in society, but I suspect it would have worked for just like girls in high school too. Find the effete homosexual in your high school and like go out with him so that he doesn't have a problem and you don't get manhandled by dudes who won't take no for an answer. And so she was like, we owe them respect.
And she also was like, and they don't get rid of us. They don't throw us away.
Yeah. I actually really loved that, because it didn't occur to me that the relationship would have actually had that additional layer in the 50s and 60s.
Well, because it is a tale as old as time, in spite of what the right would have you believe. Gay people have always existed. And
now they're whales, too.
But the thing is, it's always been understood. It's just been unspoken.
Sure.
It's not represented socially or culturally.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a very, I think the notion of, in a post, year 2000 world, we call it Will and Grace.
Yeah.
But it's like the notion of a woman and her gay best friend is very ancient.
Yeah, no.
Very ancient. And because that is another thing that, in my research, and of course, my research and my experience is fallible, but to my understanding, at any given point in time, being gay a lot of times has largely been whatever.
Yeah.
It's largely just sort of been, because we covered this in or actually we didn't cover it, but they talked about it in the TV show Black Sails.
Yep.
There's a character that's gay, and most of them know, and it's really not a problem until they politically need a reason to be rid of him.
Yep.
And then suddenly it's a problem.
Yep.
And it's always or frequently been like this with artists, where it's like Tchaikovsky, like, was gay, known, had circles, clubs, stuff. As long as they were producing valuable content,
100%.
the people looked the other way and let them have their clubs.
And that's an interesting notion with the way that Leah's acting, because she's like, I think you're right, where she was always the one who liked him the least, but he was presenting and like giving them something useful. He was entertainment. He was like around for just like having catty fun.
Well, he was a novelty, a social novelty.
But not only has he betrayed them and wronged them, he is also not producing content. So she's like, what good are you? You know? Like,
and it's the kind of thing that unfortunately it ebbs and flows. And again, I mean, I just made a right-wing joke, but it's like just a week or two ago, there were gay bars in Portland, maybe, Oregon, that were raided, like the 70s. And they had reasons, like they lewd this and that, but it got such a backlash, such an outcry, that the police department apologized.
Oh, good.
But I'm just saying, like, this can be taken away at any point.
Oh, 100%. No, of course.
And so I think that there's something, and maybe that's one of the things that we're kind of having a hard time putting our finger on with the show, with what specifically is it about. I do think it is interesting watching the exploration of these types of characters who have relationships like this in a period in time where it was known, but it wasn't talked about.
Sure. Yeah. Which
and
I think
here we at least are talking about
which
it.
That again, I think is why I liked that scene with Babe and CZ so much, because they were like, she was like, Lee needs to understand.
Well, she was offended.
That, exactly. Yeah, she was like, I'm offended. And it's not even, because at this point, Babe has not like let him back in the fold. But Jesus, don't even get me started. So like, Babe has not let him back in the fold, but like, she's not antagonistic about it anymore. So, and even Slim has let it go. So like, to have Lee be this aggressive about it in this episode, it was like shocking to, I think, all
she
of
has
them.
the hand that feeds, like he bit the hand that fed him.
Yeah,
where the rest of them are like, well, he made a mistake.
Yeah.
Or he
and then
up.
he even said the same thing when he was talking to Jack. He was like, we're like Pomeranians. We're just like a cute, fluffy thing for them to like carry around. But God forbid we show our teeth and then it's off to the pound.
Well, and because again, I think that's part of what my issue watching the show is because like I was offended by that, what he said, because I was like, well,
the metaphor hangs together.
I mean, it does, and certainly with some of them, like with, like, for instance, Lee, but I was like, don't talk, like...
That's not how Babe and CZ treat. They CZ loves
and I'm like,
him.
Don't be a martyr, like, I don't know.
It's especially martyry because he's literally done this to himself. Like, he didn't have to publish that story, and he did, and he is continuing to write more. And I don't know.
They're just like, there are places where, and I mean, maybe this is the duality of man. I mean, maybe this is the burden of being alive, but the show is covering a lot of things that I am actually very deep in. I mean, you have talked about how I'm very nostalgic. I love youth. I love beauty. I'm very romantic in that way. And so there's moments where, like, when he was talking about Kate and Rick, and he was talking about them as if that wasn't his boyfriend.
Yeah.
You know? And he's like, look at the young lovers. And it's like, I like that.
Sure.
And I'm like, this Truman is interesting. Yeah. But then when he goes back to being...
Yeah.
The words are failing me, but I don't know.
Just very needy and like... It's desperate. It's just it's a real gross, like uncomfortable and like secondhand embarrassment level of like desperate and
Who
needy.
said the word validation? Was it you watching, or did one of the characters say
it was me.
Okay.
He is absolutely just thirsty for validation. And the thing is he was getting it from the women, because he certainly never got any from his mother. And in fact, she probably was requiring it of him to be validated by him. So he is an empty well of validation, and he was getting it from these women, and then he fucked it up, and he's not getting it from them anymore. So he's trying to get it from, you know, Jack or John and Jack and Rick and like all of these men and kind of Kate. But none of it's filling the hole the same way because he needs it from his mother and they are the stand-in for his mother. And so it's just, he's empty of validation and he's looking for it in the wrong places. And the way that he's seeking it is desperate and off-putting. And so like, that's why he can't keep anyone around.
A little bit of it is okay.
A little bit, sure. Everyone
human.
Needs validation, yeah.
But it's like, he needs to be at like a 35 and he's at like a 70.
So, yes, everyone needs validation, but also you should be able to provide some of that for yourself. The fact that he wrote In Cold Blood and Breakfast at Tiffany's should have filled him with some personal validation where he knows that he's done something worthwhile that will immortalize him, basically. But all he's doing is like grabbing for more and more and more, and nothing's gonna ever fill that void. It's sad. It's just sad and gross.
Sad and lame.
Yeah.
I think that that's as good a place as any. I was going to say that, and this is not the Molly Ringwald stan in me speaking, but I am a little bit desperate for some more with Joanne. And maybe we're not getting that because the implication is that he would have that he had a good relationship with her.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why we're not. Because it would take some of the tension out. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. I'm kind of like, why is Joanne Carson even on this show? I think she's said like 4 lines. Like
she's been in 3 episodes.
I love Molly Ringwald, and I'm just like, come on, man. She's right there. She's like basically in the middle.
Well, so is Anne, and we've only had glimpses of her. But all right, well, that was our conversation about that episode, and I know that I probably have more. This is definitely the kind of show that I wish I could watch
multiple times,
more than once before we talked about it, but it's just not in the cards for us where we're at right now. So if you want to help us get there, you can head on over to the Patreon at patreon.com/soimwatching
and you can watch us watch this show if you want.
If the more money we get, the better our content can be.
Sure.
Speaking of validation.
We'll make big changes.
Bye!